Welcome on to the next video where we're talking about half marathons, and in particular training for one in 2 months. Is it possible to run a half marathon in 2 months? I'll be asking one of our running coaches, Markus today, what it takes to run a half marathon in 2 months, how you should structure your training, and what are some of the pitfalls when it comes to training for a half marathon in just 2 months. My name is Brad. I'm from CoachParry.com. That's where we help runners become fitter, faster, and stronger. Markus, we get asked this question quite often about sort of cramming, I almost want to say, for races. And in particular, this one pops up quite often, half marathon in 2 months. Is it possible to train for a half marathon in 2 months?
Brad, it's a valid question in the sense that it's can or can't I? My question would be is how much running experience do you have? If you come from a non-existent running background with very little to no running, the chances are very slim. We'll talk about the pitfalls later on, but for someone that does have some form of running background, if you make the most of your training and make sure that the gains or the jumps, I'm talking about running session duration, isn't too great, then obviously it's more doable.
Yeah, Markus, possible and advisable are quite a fine line. I think anything is possible. It's whether it's advisable or not is probably the better question to ask. Let's talk about someone who possibly does have a previous history of running. Maybe they haven't run for a while and they're keen to get back into it, or they've decided to do a half marathon in 2 months from now. How would they go about doing it? How would you structure your training to run a half marathon in 2 months from now?
So Brad, I'd literally break it down into a week-for-week program. Firstly, start off with maybe 1 day on, 1 day off for the first week, and don't go and run an hour for your first time, or for your first run, or for your first week's runs. If it's 30 minutes where it starts getting uncomfortable, then cap it at 30 minutes. The next run can either be the same duration or 10 to 15 minutes longer. The week after that, you'll generally add 10 to 15 minutes onto that run. I'd stay clear of doing speed work because the idea is just to finish the actual half marathon. And Lindsay once said something, and it's a very, very true thing. The slower the change, the slower the progress, the more permanent the change. So if you, it's the same as how do you eat an elephant, bit by bit. So if you literally just make sure you tick the boxes as you go along, increasing your runs in duration, not necessarily mileage, the chances of you being successful are rather great, because it's not about, oh, but I've never run a long run or never done a long run of 21 kilometers or longer. It's about the cumulative mileage in a week that makes the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And we hammer this home all the time, Marcus. Consistency is probably the biggest thing that you need to focus on. And like you say, if day one you go out and run an hour, and the next day and the next 2 days you're so stiff you can't run, you're not doing yourself any favors. It's better to build up slowly, but make sure that over the next 2 months you literally don't miss one session. You've got recovery scheduled in, but the days you're supposed to run, you don't miss one of those runs.
100%. You couldn't have said it any better. You're really not going to do yourself any favors by trying to push for time or pace, or it's not a race. If you're really so serious about that race, you should have started training more than 8 weeks ago. The chances of you sidelining yourself or hitting yourself in the process is far greater than you just trying to be consistent for those 7 weeks and make sure you freshen up in the last week. You'll be way better off by following the conservative approach.
Yeah, and I went to varsity, and a lot of it was cramming when it came to exams, and unfortunately half marathon running, you can't cram it. 2 months is probably doable, but you've got to be consistent, and you've just got to be sensible about it. Let's talk about some of those pitfalls. What are some of the dangers of running a half marathon or training for a half marathon in 2 months?
So the most important thing is you need to set a realistic goal for yourself. If it's unrealistic, the chances of you hurting yourself and just not liking running in general, or disliking it, or starting to dislike it because of the fact that you're pushing your body too hard, you're trying to be who you're not as a runner, obviously that's not great. That's something that you need to stay clear of. And obviously also training at the right intensities. Once again, it's not about how fast you can go. On the day, it's about if you can go far enough. So you need to make sure that there's slight overreaching in your training, in the sense that your week one's long run was, let's say, 45 minutes. The next week needs to be 55. The week after that, it can be 1 hour and 5 minutes. So add 10 to 15 minutes depending on how your body responds to the training. But above all else, you need to set a realistic goal for yourself.
Absolutely. We've written a pretty extensive post on our website. If you want to find out more about it, you can click the link below this video, or it's on the screen as well right now. There's a whole bunch of info there over and above what we spoke about today. There's also training programs, the work. So go check it out. Click on that link, and yeah, good luck. I look forward to seeing how you go, and please do let us know how it goes. Half marathon's a great distance. It's one of my favorites. It's probably challenging enough that you have to do some training, but it's not like a marathon where it hurts. I think half marathons are probably the best distance to be running. Markus, as always, thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Brad.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget, if you don't want to miss out on any of our videos, make sure you click the subscribe button over here. You can watch our latest video over here, and be sure to check out one of our most popular videos over here. And then also, if you want to catch up and grab one of our free strength training programs, all you need to do is click over here.